The moment the CFO pushed back his chair, I knew what was coming. I'd rehearsed this strategy meeting for months, preparing data, projections, risk assessments. Every detail polished until it gleamed. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the sight of 11 executives rising in unison like a perfectly choreographed rejection. "We're done wasting time on her mistakes," Marcus, the CFO, announced loudly enough for the entire floor to hear his voice had that smug, lazy confidence of a man who'd never once been held accountable for the damage he caused. The room shifted with the rustling of tailored suits and polished shoes scraping against the floor. Not one of them met my eyes. Not one. They gathered their tablets, stacks of untouched reports, their overpriced coffees, then moved as a single unit toward the door. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I had been mid-sentence, explaining the structural failure patterns I'd uncovered in our logistics system. Patterns that threatened our biggest contracts. Patterns they knew had been buried long before I arrived. 11 executives abandoned the room, their backs forming a wall of silent dismissal. Marcus paused at the doorway, hand on the light switch. "Claire," he said without turning around, "don't bother finishing. No one cares." Then he flicked the lights off. The room dimmed, leaving only the pale glow of my projector illuminating the graphs I had worked on every night for the last 7 weeks. My heart hammered against my ribs, shaking with anger, humiliation, and something sharper. For exactly 30 seconds, I sat frozen, not moving, not breathing. Then everything inside me stilled. The fear evaporated. The shame dissolved. All that remained was clarity. I opened my laptop, navigated to a draft email I'd prepared days ago. One attachment, one sentence. I hit send by 2 p.m. 8 of them would be... But that moment would come later. Before the unraveling began, before the building would flood with investigators and panic, there was only the quiet hum of the projector and the single thought echoing through my mind. They just confirmed everything I'd suspected for weeks, that the executives were trying to divert attention from a major internal breach. Something serious enough that they were willing to sacrifice anyone who got too close. I just didn't know how deep it went. But now, their synchronized walkout was as good as a confession. I closed my laptop and took a long breath. The same breath I used to take before surgical presentations back when I worked in clinical risk analysis. Before the accident, before the lawsuit that pushed me out of medicine and into corporate compliance, I'd reinvented myself once. I could do it again. My name is Claire. Until last week, I was the director of strategic risk management at Viridian Industries, one of the largest supply chain technology firms in the country. A place that prided itself on innovation. A place that built its legacy on safety and transparency. A place that had no idea the storm I was about to bring to their door. I wasn't always the woman who quietly gathered evidence. I wasn't always the woman executives feared. Growing up, my father worked in construction. He used to say, "Measure twice, cut once. But if you see the foundation cracking, don't walk away. Fix it, even if no one thanks you." He died after a scaffolding collapse caused by falsified safety reports. I was 17. That day shaped me. And maybe that's why Viridian recruited me so aggressively. "We need someone who isn't afraid to tell the truth," Marcus had said during my interview. Funny how quickly the truth becomes a mistake when powerful people feel threatened. The first red flag appeared during my 3rd week when I discovered a batch of internal audits missing from the digital archives. When I asked the audit manager about them, she went pale and muttered something about administrative misplacement. Then came the whispered warnings, the nervous glances, the unexplained resignation of my predecessor, and finally, the numbers. Oh, the numbers, the discrepancies, the patterns, the evidence no one wanted to talk about. They thought walking out would scare me, intimidate me, break me. Instead, they handed me the final puzzle piece. As I left the darkened meeting room, the projector still glowing behind me, I felt no fear. Only the cold, steady certainty that the email I had just sent was the beginning of the end for them. By the time I stepped out of the dimmed conference room, the humiliation on my skin had already hardened into something else. Purpose. The email I had sent was simple, clinical, and heavier than any threat I could have uttered out loud. To L. Harrington. Subject, Viridian internal findings. Immediate review. Requested attachment. Full report _ Claire W.docx body. As discussed, evidence attached. Confirm receipt. No drama, no emotion, just facts. Dangerous ones. My heels clicked softly as I walked down the corridor toward my office. Most people avoided eye contact, as if humiliation were contagious, a few whispered. A few stared at their screens a little too intensely. But Nadia, one of my data analysts, glanced up with a look I hadn't expected. Fear not for herself. For me. She waited until the hallway emptied before approaching. They're saying you accused the logistics team of fraud, she whispered. That's not what happened. I know. She swallowed hard. They're spinning it fast. Marcus told the operations floor your report was destructive and grossly incompetent. Of course he did, classic preemptive retaliation. Thank you for telling me, I said. She hesitated. Claire? Be careful. Then she slipped back into her cubicle like a shadow afraid of light. Inside my office, I locked the door before sitting down. I didn't have long. When regulators receive a report like mine, especially one flagged urgent, things start moving quickly, yet everything that followed happened even faster than I expected. At 1:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number? Claire Wilson? Yes. This is Agent Harrington. We've received your transmission. The tone was crisp, controlled, but beneath it was tension, real tension. We need clarification on several points, she continued, particularly the supply chain tampering and the altered subcontractor vetting forms. I can explain all of it. We'll need to conduct interviews today. How soon can you meet us in the lobby? I checked the time. 1:07 p.m. The executives weren't expecting anything until next quarter's audit. Give me 10 minutes, I said. We'll be there in 8. She hung up. 8 minutes, not hours, not days. 8 minutes until the first crack hit Viridian like a tremor before an earthquake. Before leaving my office, I opened the drawer where I kept my small external drive. I'd encrypted and backed up every piece of evidence. The altered reports, the deleted audits, the internal messages where senior management joked about creative compliance. I slipped the drive into my coat pocket, then grabbed only my essentials. Arrogant executives always believed they controlled the timeline. They were about to learn otherwise. When I reached the elevator, my reflection in the metal doors surprised me. Calm. Focused. Not a trace of the woman they'd tried to humiliate an hour earlier. The elevator opened, and standing inside was Marcus. He leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with a predator's confidence. Well, he said smoothly, that meeting sure fell apart quickly. You really should work on your delivery. I stepped inside without responding. The doors closed. Marcus chuckled. I heard you locked yourself in your office afterward. Emotional damage control? Something like that. You should know. He continued, lowering his voice. Your little presentation stunt won't save you. The board trusts us, not you, and we can bury this easily. I turned my head slightly. Can you? His smile faltered. Just a hair, but I saw it. When evidence disappears, he said, no one remembers it existed. My stomach tightened, not in fear, but in vindication. He'd just confirmed what I already suspected. They'd destroyed reports before the elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped out first, adjusting his suit jacket with the arrogance of a man who believed nothing could touch him. Try not to make a scene when HR calls you, he said over his shoulder. I watched him walk away. Try not to make a scene. The irony nearly made me laugh, because by 2 p.m., 8 of them would be. The lobby was busier than usual. Employees clustered near the coffee kiosk, murmuring over some company-wide memo I hadn't seen yet. When I walked past them, conversations abruptly stopped. And then the glass doors swung open. 4 individuals in dark suits entered. 2 women, 2 men. Agent Harrington led them, badge already visible. The entire lobby froze. People turned. Phones subtly lifted. Security looked uncertain. Federal Compliance Division, Harrington announced to the guard. We're here to review internal submissions made this morning and begin preliminary examinations. The guard's face drained of color. He fumbled for his radio. Harrington turned to me. Ms. Wilson? Yes. Please step with us. As we moved toward the internal corridor, whispers rippled across the lobby. Is that Claire? What's happening? Are we under investigation? My heart thudded, not from fear, but from the weight of what was beginning. We reached the private meeting rooms, and Harrington closed the door behind us. Your report was thorough, she said, but the patterns you uncovered suggest long-term systemic concealment. We'll need cooperation from several executives immediately. I exhaled slowly. You'll get it. She sat down, opened her folder, and tapped her pen. Let's start with Marcus. Tell me everything you know. By 2 p.m., 8 of them would be walking out of this building. Not with confidence, not with arrogance, but with investigators on either side of them. And this time, they wouldn't be the ones in control. Agent Harrington didn't waste time. The moment the door clicked shut, she opened her file, eyes scanning the pages like she'd memorized half of it already. Claire, she began, I need you to walk me through the internal patterns you mentioned, starting with the subcontractor irregularities. I nodded, pulling up my encrypted drive. It started small, missing signatures, duplicate approvals. Then I found supplier audits marked compliant despite failed background checks. Harrington exchanged a look with one of her colleagues. For how long? At least 3 years. The pen in her hand froze midair. That long? She repeated quietly. Yes, I said. And the scale is bigger than logistics financial reports were being amended after board reviews. Safety evaluations were rewritten to hide systemic problems. And someone, likely multiple people, deleted evidence from the archives. Which executives were involved? She asked. The patterns point to at least 8. Possibly more. Her colleague, Agent Davis, leaned forward. Do you have proof of their direct involvement? Yes. I tapped the folder on my laptop. Email chains, approval stamps, metadata alterations, and recorded conversations. Harrington's brows lifted. Recorded? Meeting rooms auto-record everything under Section 4.3 of the company policy manual. Most executives forget that. A small, sharp smile appeared on Davis's face. Convenient. I nodded. Very. Harrington closed her file. Claire, what you've documented isn't internal misconduct. It borders on large-scale corporate fraud. We're going to need access to executive offices immediately. My pulse flickered. Then you're right on time. She checked her watch. 1:41 p.m., 19 minutes until the storm. The agents moved with quiet efficiency, a practiced choreography. Harrington gestured for me to follow her to the elevator. You'll stay with us, she said. We'll need your context for what we find. As we walked out, employees began noticing the badges, the folders, the expressions, fear, urgency, authority. A low murmur spread across the lobby like a rising tide. What's going on? Who are they with? Is this about the audits? But nobody asked me anything, they just watched. The elevator doors opened and the 4 of us stepped inside. Harrington pressed the button for the executive floor. As the doors shut, I inhaled slowly. This was the floor where everything began to unravel, and where everything would end. When we reached the top floor, the air was different. Quiet, polished, insulated from the rest of the company. The hallways looked expensive enough to hide anything. Maybe that was the point. The agents moved quickly, splitting into pairs. Harrington stayed with me. Whose office first? She asked. Marcus, I said. Start with the head of the snake. She nodded once. Inside Marcus's office, a junior legal assistant jumped to her feet. "You can't be in here." Harrington flashed her badge. "We can. And we are." The assistant went pale and backed away. Agent Davis began photographing the room. Another agent opened desk drawers, file cabinets, inspection logs. "Claire?" Harrington said. "Which files would he hide?" "Not in the obvious places." I walked around the room, scanning. Marcus always kept a secondary drive. He thought no one noticed him using it. Harrington asked, "Where?" "Right here." I crouched beside the radiator panel, a sleek, decorative cover. He used to reach under it during meetings. I pressed lightly. A soft click sounded. The panel opened half an inch. The legal assistant gasped. Davis looked impressed. Inside the compartment sat a small silver drive. Exactly where I knew it would be. Harrington removed it with gloves. "This could be critical." "It will be," I said. The assistant whispered. "He told us this was a ventilation panel." Harrington didn't respond. She simply turned to me. "Next office." By 2 p.m., the building was no longer quiet. Word had spread, faster than emails, faster than rumors, faster than fear itself. Executives were being escorted out of their offices, not in handcuffs, but flanked by federal agents, their faces rigid and colorless. The hallways filled with stunned employees watching their once powerful leaders shrink into shadows. Vivian, the operations VP, exited her office trembling. "What is this?" she demanded. "You can't, this is absurd." Davis held up a document. "We can, and we have a warrant." She spotted me then, standing behind Harrington. "You," she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You did this." "No," I said calmly. "You did this." Her lips parted in disbelief. She looked like someone watching her entire identity crumble. 2 more executives emerged from their corner suites as the agents read their temporary suspension orders. Their eyes flicked between each other, searching for someone to blame. Anyone but themselves. I stood still, watching the realization settle across their faces like a slow, suffocating fog. 8 executives, Marcus included, were guided toward the elevator. Some silent, some stunned, some whispering frantic explanations that wouldn't save them. The doors closed with a metallic thud. By 2 p.m., the power structure of Viridian Industries had toppled, and I had only begun. When Harrington and I returned to the corridor, she spoke quietly. "Claire, what you exposed may reshape an entire segment of this industry." I exhaled slowly. It needed to be done. "Just know," she added, "things may get complicated from here. People don't lose power quietly." I nodded. I'm prepared for whatever comes next. But the truth was, I wasn't prepared for who would confront me before the day ended. Because as we stepped into the hallway, someone was waiting. Someone I didn't expect. And the look in his eyes told me this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. He was leaning against the glass wall outside Marcus's office when we stepped into the hallway. Arms folded, expression unreadable. Daniel. Of all people, he was the last I expected to see there. He'd been my closest ally during my first months at Viridian. A senior project director with a reputation for integrity. Someone who'd warned me, quietly, subtly, that certain executives played by a different set of rules. He never gave specifics, but he always made sure I looked in the right places. And then, about a month ago, he changed. Stopped dropping by my office. Stopped answering after-hours calls. Stopped making the sarcastic comments that used to break tense days. I thought he was distancing himself for his own safety. Now I wasn't so sure. As soon as his eyes locked onto mine, the hallway seemed to tighten around us. Harrington paused beside me, assessing him instantly. "Ms. Wilson," Daniel said, pushing off the wall. "We need to talk." Harrington stepped slightly in front of me. "And you are?" "Daniel Hart, Senior Director." His jaw clenched. "And someone who knows exactly how far this thing goes." Harrington studied him. Are you claiming to be a cooperating insider? His laugh was rough. Claiming? No, I'm telling you. My pulse spiked. Daniel, what are you talking about? He turned to me, and the exhaustion in his face was unmistakable dark circles. A stiffness in the shoulders I'd never seen before. This wasn't arrogance or fear. It was someone carrying too much for too long. I tried to warn you, he said quietly, but you kept digging faster than they expected. Warn me about what? I asked. He glanced at the nearby security cameras before lowering his voice. Tomas didn't leave quietly, and neither will they. The name hit me like a punch to the ribs. My predecessor, the man whose sudden disappearance started my suspicions. Daniel, I said, what do you know about Tomas? He exhaled shakily. More than I should, and more than I wanted to. Harrington stepped in. Mr. Hart, if you have information relevant to this investigation, this conversation needs to happen in a controlled environment. Daniel nodded once, but his eyes stayed on me. You're not safe here, he said. You think today is the end of it, but it's not. They'll try to shift everything onto you. They already drafted a secondary report last night, claiming you manipulated the data. My throat tightened. They what? I saw Marcus editing it himself. He planned to submit it to the board after your meeting today. Harrington pulled out her notebook. You're saying they fabricated evidence? Yes, Daniel said. They were preparing a narrative months in advance. They knew Tomas was going to blow the whistle, so they built a new origin story, one they could recycle with you. A cold wave washed down my spine. A replacement scapegoat. Why tell me now? I asked. The question hovered longer than it should have. Finally, he said, voice low. Because you did what Thomas couldn't, and they're terrified. They won't go down quietly. Harrington nodded sharply. Mr. Hart, you're coming with us. Daniel didn't resist. He just sighed. A long, defeated breath. Before they walked him away, he turned to me. Claire, don't trust anyone who isn't already in that room with you. He motioned toward the conference space where investigators were gathering evidence. You think you've seen everything. You haven't. And then he disappeared behind the door with Harrington and the others. When they left, I stood alone in the corridor for a moment, trying to steady myself. Fabricated reports, pre-planned scapegoating, a cover-up organized months before I ever stepped foot inside Viridian. The walkout hadn't been impulsive. It was rehearsed, practiced, a final attempt to discredit me before the truth came out. I walked toward the end of the hallway, where the windows overlooked the city skyline. The glass vibrated faintly with the hum of helicopters, news crews circling above the building like vultures sensing a weakened animal. Inside, employees huddled in knots. The rumor mill churned like a live wire, every whisper louder than the last. 8 executives escorted out. Federal agents everywhere. Claire Wilson was with them. She must have found something serious. For the first time since the walkout, I felt something new rising in my chest. Not fear, not anger, not humiliation, conviction. This wasn't just about me. This was about the patients harmed by faulty equipment, the small businesses bankrupted by corrupt supply practices, the workers threatened into silence, the man, Thomas, who'd been erased. And now, Daniel, someone who'd watched the machine from the inside long enough to understand its darkest edges. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the small external drive. 8 executives down, evidence secured, and an insider ready to speak. But I knew Daniel was right. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because the ones who hadn't been escorted out today, the ones still hiding in shadows, were far more dangerous. And tomorrow morning at the emergency board session, they would reveal themselves, willingly or not. By the next morning, Viridian's headquarters didn't look like a tech giant anymore. It looked like a crime scene holding itself together by a thread. Temporary barricades surrounded the property. News vans lined the sidewalks. Reporters clustered at the entrances, calling out questions I didn't answer. Inside, security had tripled. Employees walked quietly, avoiding eye contact, as if the building itself had become dangerous. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. At 7:55, Zoe, the board chair's assistant, met me outside the executive floor. "They're waiting for you," she said softly. Everyone's tense. Tense was an understatement. When she opened the boardroom door, the air felt thick enough to chew. 20 people sat around the long walnut table. Board members, attorneys, senior staff who hadn't yet been suspended. 3 chairs sat empty, the ones taken away yesterday. Edmund, the board chair, stood at the head of the table. "Ms. Wilson," he said, "please come in." Dozens of eyes followed me as I walked to the front of the room. Some held anger, some fear. Some were simply empty, like they were already grieving the fall of something they had believed was unshakable. "Before we begin," Edmund continued, "I must inform the board that 8 executives have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The Federal Compliance Division has been granted full access to Viridian's internal systems." A ripple of alarm. One board member leaned forward. "Are we in criminal territory?" "That depends," Edmund said, "on the evidence presented today." He gestured for me to begin. I connected my laptop to the screen behind me. The lights dimmed. The same presentation the executives walked out on yesterday glowed across the monitors. Except this time, I included the missing slide, the one I'd saved. "Yesterday," I said, steadying my voice, "I presented structural failures in our supply chain protocols. What I didn't show was the root cause." I clicked forward. The screen displayed a timeline of altered audit results, manipulated subcontractor vetting files, and financial transfers tied to falsified safety records. A murmur spread across the room. "These patterns aren't accidents," I continued. "They're coordinated behaviors spanning at least 3 years. I turned to face them, and the executives who walked out yesterday were directly involved in all of it. One attorney raised a hand. "Ms. Wilson, do you have proof of intent?" I clicked again. Screenshots of group messages, approval chains, metadata logs, a video clip from the day before. The audio played clearly. Marcus's voice echoed through the dark room. "Don't bother finishing, no one cares." A board member whispered, "My God." I paused the video. "This recording," I said, "was captured by the room's automated system according to policy 4.3, which all of you approved." Silence thickened. Then someone spoke from the far end of the table. "Where is Thomas?" Edmund stiffened. "Tomas resigned for medical reasons. That's what we were told." "No," I said quietly. "Tomas created encrypted backups of all this data. He planned to submit it, but was threatened with fabricated fraud charges if he didn't sign a settlement." A wave of shock shuddered through the room. "How do you know that?" a board member asked. "Because yesterday," I said. "Daniel Hart confirmed it." Edmund looked sharply at me. "Mr. Hart is cooperating?" "He is," I replied. He saw the secondary narrative the executives prepared to frame me, the same strategy they used on Thomas. An attorney stood. "You're saying they planned to scapegoat you?" I nodded. "They walked out yesterday so they could claim I was unstable, incompetent, and acting alone." "Jesus," someone whispered. I switched to the final set of slides. "This morning," I said, "federal agents are executing search warrants at 9 additional locations. They have retrieved Marcus's hidden drive. They have access to every altered report, every payment trail, every deleted file." A board member pressed a hand to her forehead. "This will destroy us." "No," Edmund said quietly. "What they did will destroy us. What Ms. Wilson did might save what's left." He turned toward me. "What do you recommend, Claire?" The question stunned me for a moment, not because he asked, but because of what came next. I resign, I said simply. A ripple of shock. You what? Someone blurted. I'm stepping down effective immediately. Edmund frowned. You've been instrumental in uncovering this. You could help rebuild. I shook my head. I didn't do this to rebuild Viridian. I did this because lives were being harmed, because silence was enabling corruption, and because Tomas didn't get the chance to finish what he started. I closed my laptop. My work here is done. The room stayed silent as I gathered my things. When I reached the door, someone called out, Claire? I turned. It was the board member who had first asked about Tomas. Her face was soft, almost weary. Thank you, she said, for telling the truth when no one else would. I nodded once and stepped into the hallway outside the building. The cool air hit my skin like a reset button. Reporters clamored nearby, but I kept walking, slipping through the crowd unnoticed. My phone buzzed. A new email from Dr. Harrington. Subject, case progress body. Charges moving forward. You did the right thing. Let's talk next steps. And below that, another email. From Daniel Hart. Subject, whatever comes next, you didn't stand alone. I stood there, breathing in the morning light, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not victory. Relief. Because the message was clear. Power can corrupt. Silence can destroy. But truth, spoken by even one person, can move mountains. At exactly 4:03 p.m. on Friday, the moment everyone mentally checks out for the weekend, my boss, Adam, appeared in my doorway with the kind of smug smile you only see on people who enjoy causing pain. He tapped the side of my cubicle like he was delivering good news. Liv, he said, tossing a thin file onto my desk. You're being transferred Monday. Just like that. No explanation. No transition period. A few coworkers froze mid-pack, eyes flicking between us. Even the office printers seemed to pause. Transferred to where was the real blow. I opened the file and there it was in cold, sharp font. Northside branch. Effective immediately. My stomach dropped. Everyone in the company knew Northside was shutting down in 30 days. The staff had already received notice. The clients had been informed inventory inspections were scheduled. It wasn't a transfer. It was a burial. Adam leaned against my desk, arms crossed, enjoying every second. Have fun. He added with a laugh too loud for the almost empty office. Think of it as career exploration. Another chuckle. You'd think they were giving me a trip to Italy, not sending me to manage a dying location. I forced my voice to remain calm. Northside is closing. He shrugged as if the idea had never occurred to him. That's above my pay grade. HR signed off. You start Monday. I knew better. Nothing happened in our region without Adam's fingerprints on it. This was punishment. His retaliation for what happened at last month's strategy meeting when I questioned the decision to cut community lending programs. I'd brought data, case studies, and projections. He'd brought ego, and ego always hits back. Adam leaned closer, lowering his voice. Maybe you'll pick up some new skills while winding things down. He winked. My hands tightened around the file. I wanted to say something, anything, but every word I thought of would have cost me my job by Monday morning, so I swallowed it. He straightened, smoothing the front of his perfectly pressed shirt. Enjoy your weekend. He walked away without looking back. The office fell silent except for the clicking of keyboards no one was really typing on. A few coworkers gave me sympathetic looks, the kind you give someone who just learned their vacation flight was canceled. My phone buzzed on my desk. A text from Maya, my closest friend at work. Are you okay? Was I? No, but I also wasn't surprised. Because what Adam didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had seen this coming weeks ago, and I had already started preparing. By the time I stepped out into the parking garage, the sky had turned heavy and dark, the kind of late afternoon storm that made you question whether the sun had ever existed. The first raindrop hit before I even reached my car. I sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel as the rain hammered against the windshield 60-hour weeks. Holidays spent in the office, covering for every mistake that wasn't mine. Training new hires who later leapfrogged past me, and now I was being tossed aside like broken office furniture. But under all the anger, there was something else. A spark. Because I wasn't going to Northside blind, I wasn't going unprepared, and I wasn't going down quietly. I turned the key. Monday would be interesting. Northside sat on the edge of the old industrial district, once busy, now forgotten. I pulled into the cracked parking lot at 8:04 a.m., the silence almost eerie. The sign on the building flickered weakly, one light short of going dark completely. Inside, the branch felt like stepping into a time capsule. Carpet worn thin, faded posters, computers that still had sticker residue from early 2000s training programs. 5 employees looked up as I walked in with a single box of belongings. Their expressions ranged from confused to exhausted. None of them had been told someone new was coming. Wonderful. A woman in her 50s approached me first. Her name tag read, Helen. 16 years with the company, according to her HR profile? Yes, I had already checked. You must be Liv, she said. Didn't know they were sending a new manager. Neither did I admitted. She sighed and motioned toward the small glass-walled office. Well, that's yours, for whatever that's worth. The office held nothing but outdated manuals, empty drawers, and a crooked clock stuck at 11:52. I closed the door behind me and exhaled. This branch wasn't dying. It had been strangled. Budget cuts. No outreach support. 0 updates for years. Exactly the kind of place Adam wanted me to fail. But he had no idea what I already knew. No idea what I had been tracking. No idea what was about to happen. Because 72 hours earlier, while Adam was busy planning my professional funeral, I discovered something that changed everything. A new city development plan. A rezoning proposal. A flood of new businesses moving into the district. And Northside, this forgotten, neglected branch, sat right at the center of it. The company had missed it. Adam had missed it. But I hadn't. I looked at the dusty office, the tired employees, the dying branch. And I smiled. Monday would be fun. When I stepped out of my tiny glass office for the first time that morning, the 5 Northside employees were gathered near the break room, whispering in that exhausted, hopeless way people do when they've accepted their fate. I recognized the look. I had worn it myself after hearing Adam's "have fun." Only difference? Mine had burned off by now. Helen approached me again, her voice soft. Liv, I'm not sure what they told you, but there's not much to manage here. We're just processing closures until the day they lock the doors. Behind her, the others nodded. Reuben, the loan officer with kind eyes but a defeated slouch. Tanya, the teller who looked too young to have already learned disappointment so well. Max, the part-time admin juggling school and work. And Irene, who had been here longer than anyone, 21 years, and whose face showed that she had watched this branch slowly starve under corporate decisions made hundreds of miles away. I know, I said gently. I'm not here to pretend this place isn't closing. They exchanged glances, relief mixed with resignation. But, I continued, I am here to understand what went wrong. Reuben let out a short laugh. What went wrong? Everything. No budget, no upgrades, no approval authority. We've been forgotten. And headquarters hasn't responded to a single request since March, Irene added. I tried reaching them about the redevelopment in the industrial district. Never heard back. My pulse ticked up. Redevelopment? She frowned. You don't know? I shook my head slowly, though I knew exactly what she was talking about. I just needed to hear it from inside the branch to confirm what I'd uncovered. City bought out the old factories, she explained. They're converting them into warehouses, small business spaces, tech startups. Hundreds of them. It's the biggest project the district's seen in decades. My heart thudded once, hard. Max added, "Most of them are opening in the next few months. Some already have. But the company never gave us approval to reach out. Said it wasn't in alignment with strategic goals." Strategic goals. Adam's goals. I kept my face neutral, though inside something clicked sharply into place. Northside wasn't dying because the community didn't need it. Northside was dying because someone wanted it to die. I turned back toward my office. "I need 10 minutes, I said. Then, can everyone meet me in the small conference room?" They all exchanged confused looks, but nodded. Inside my office, I opened the drawer where I'd quietly slid my folder that morning. The folder Adam tossed at me had contained nothing useful. But my folder? My folder contained the reason Monday wouldn't go the way he expected. 3 weeks earlier, long before Adam announced my transfer, I'd overheard something that made my instincts flare. 2 managers chatting after hours, unaware that I was still in the office. "Northside is next on Adam's list. He'll close it by Q2. He wants to show corporate he can cut underperforming locations. He already reassigned their business accounts to Central Branch." That night, I started digging. Public records, city planning documents, rezoning proposals, business license applications. And the deeper I went, the clearer the pattern became. Northside wasn't positioned in a dying area. It was positioned in an emerging gold mine. Headquarters had missed it, or ignored it, or didn't care. But I cared. I pulled out the map I'd printed and unfolded it across the desk. Red dots marked every new business permit filed in the last 12 months. The cluster around Northside was almost glowing. If this branch had been given even a fraction of the support allocated to the wealthier districts, it wouldn't be closing. It would be expanding. I stared at the map until my heartbeat steadied. Until the anger sharpened into something usable, I gathered the papers and stepped into the hallway. The conference room was small, the kind with a table too big for the space and chairs collected from 3 different decades. The team sat waiting, guarded but curious. I placed the map in the center of the table. "This," I began, "is everything headquarters told you didn't exist." Their eyes followed the red clusters. Helen blinked. "Are these all new businesses?" "Filed within the last year," I confirmed. "Most within the past 4 months. And almost all within a 1-mile radius of this branch." Ruben leaned forward. "But we weren't approved to pursue commercial accounts." "I know," I said quietly. "But that wasn't because there was no opportunity. It was because someone didn't want this branch to have it." The room fell still. Very still. I let the moment breathe. Then, "I'm not asking you to believe in miracles. I'm asking you to believe in facts. This branch didn't fail. It was strangled." Their expressions shifted. Confusion toward anger, anger toward something that looked dangerously like hope. "Headquarters thinks this place is already dead," I continued. "And Adam..." I paused, swallowing the bitterness. "Adam thinks transferring me here is a clean way to bury 2 problems at once." Tanya whispered. "So what do we do?" I looked at each of them. Really looked. "I don't know if we can save this branch," I admitted honestly. "But I do know this. I didn't come here to sit quietly and watch a place with this much potential die without a fight." A long silence followed. Then Irene's voice, steady and unexpectedly firm. "What do you need from us?" In that moment, right there in a cramped conference room inside a forgotten branch, I felt the spark fully ignite. "First," I said, pulling out my notebook, "we gather information. Everything headquarters ignored. Everything they suppressed. We're going to build a picture they can't pretend not to see." Ruben smiled faintly for the first time. "You're serious?" I nodded. "Very." Because I hadn't just come to Northside to survive. I'd come to expose the truth. And the clock was already ticking. By Tuesday morning, the weight of what we were doing began to settle over the branch like an invisible fog. Nothing was said outright, but every glance carried the same question. Are we really doing this? I arrived 15 minutes before opening. The parking lot was empty except for Ruben's car. He was always early, and a white sedan I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored it, but something about the way it was angled toward the building made me slow down. Inside, Ruben was in the lobby, arms folded, face tight. "You've got a visitor," he said. "Been waiting since 8:15. My stomach tightened. "Who?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because when I stepped behind the teller counter and saw the man leaning casually against the customer desk, my jaw clenched. Adam. He greeted me with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Morning, Liv." What was he doing here? He hated visiting branches unless cameras were involved. "We weren't expecting you," I said evenly. "Thought I'd check in, see how my transfer project is settling in." He looked around with exaggerated slowness. "Charming little place. Shame it's closing." Every word was a needle. Ruben excused himself quickly, and I couldn't blame him. Adam moved closer. "You look tired, Liv. Rough first day?" "Busy," I replied. "A lot to learn." "Oh, I'm sure." His voice dipped. "I just hope you're focusing on the right things." My pulse ticked up. "Meaning?" His lips curved in that familiar, chilling smirk. "Just heard a strange rumor. Something about maps? Discussions about business outreach?" His eyes locked onto mine. Surely that's not happening. Wouldn't want anyone thinking Northside is attempting new initiatives. That would be inappropriate. So someone had already said something. I kept my expression neutral. "We're preparing closure documentation." "Good," he said, "because headquarters is allergic to surprises." He stepped even closer. "And Liv, I'd hate to hear you were giving the staff false hope. They've accepted the end. Don't confuse them." Before I could respond, he turned toward the door. "Have a wonderful week." He called over his shoulder, voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Don't make trouble." The moment he walked out, I sank into the nearest chair. That was our warning. But not the kind he thought he was giving. It was confirmation. He was nervous. He knew we'd found something. He just didn't know how much. At 9:02 a.m., before the branch officially opened, the team gathered in the break room. No one needed an explanation. They'd all seen Adam leave. I placed both hands on the table to steady myself. "We need to be careful. Really careful. Someone is feeding him information." Max swallowed. "One of us?" "Maybe. Or someone downtown picked up on our activity. Doesn't matter which. We stay quiet. We stay smart. We don't use internal emails for anything related to this." Tanya nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "My friend at Central Branch said they've been told to flag any unusual queries coming from Northside." So Adam was tightening the net. Expected, but not enough to stop us. I pulled out the map and placed it on the table. "We keep going, but from now on, everything we do has to leave no digital trail." Their eyes followed me. I continued. "Today, I want us to start gathering first-hand information. Not projections, not assumptions. Real voices from the community. If we can document what these businesses need and how much revenue they could bring, we can build a case no one can ignore." Ruben frowned. "Headquarters won't let us meet with businesses." "I know." I took a breath. "Which means we don't meet them as representatives. We meet them as listeners." It wasn't technically against any rule. Yet. "The district is opening 2 warehouses this week," Ruben offered. "There'll be contractors, vendors, small business teams. We could talk to them without mentioning the bank." "I can stop by after my shift," Tanya added. "My cousin's moving his startup into the renovated textile building." "Good," I said. "The more authentic feedback we gather, the stronger our case." And just like that, for the first time since Monday, the room shifted from fear to purpose. The rest of the day moved in small, meaningful steps. At noon, two elderly customers came in for account closures. Irene offered them water, walked them through everything gently. When they left, she turned to me, eyes shining with something like guilt. "They're leaving because they think this branch doesn't matter," she whispered. "But it does. It always did." I put a hand on her arm. "Then let's prove it." She nodded. At 3 p.m. While I was reviewing ancient loan files, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Be careful. He's watching more closely than you think." My mouth went dry. I looked around the quiet branch, half expecting someone to be lurking in the corner. Was it a threat? A warning? From who? I didn't show the message to the team. Not yet. They were already wound tight. Instead, I filed it away mentally. Another crack in the system. Another clue. Someone inside the company wanted me to succeed, or wanted Adam to fail. Either way, the timing wasn't accidental. When the last customer left at 5:01 p.m., the team and I gathered again. Ruben placed a notebook on the table. 6 businesses I spoke with today say they're looking for a bank closer to the district. Tanya added 2 pages of notes from her cousin's building. Helen had printed out 3 years of ignored upgrade requests. And Max had pulled together a list of every rejected marketing proposal. None of it was dramatic, but all of it was damning. I looked at the pile of evidence, small but growing. Proof of neglect, proof of need, proof of potential. "This," I said quietly, "is how we start." No one spoke. They didn't need to, because every person in that room felt the same thing I did. We were standing at the edge of something bigger than any of us had expected. And if Adam wanted a quiet, orderly closure, he'd picked the wrong branch and the wrong woman to bury. By Thursday morning, the air inside Northside felt different. Charged, like the pause before a storm hits. Not loud, not obvious, but tense enough that every small noise seemed sharper. We'd spent the past 2 days gathering evidence, talking to local businesses discreetly, compiling every record of ignored requests and missed opportunities. The pile was growing, too slowly but steadily, and apparently someone noticed. At 9:18 a.m., as Tanya tried logging into her computer, she suddenly went still. Liv?" she called out, voice tight. I walked over. "What's wrong?" She stepped aside. Her screen displayed a blinking message. "Access level restricted contact regional management." My stomach tightened. "Try again." She did. Same message. Ruben tried next. Same result. Max. Same. I felt heat rise behind my ribs. Let me check mine. When I entered my credentials, a new message appeared. "This account has been flagged for system review." That wasn't a malfunction that was targeted. Helen appeared at my side. "They've restricted us," she whispered. "Someone manually changed our permissions." No need to guess who. I walked into my tiny glass office, closed the door, and called IT. After 20 minutes of being bounced between departments, someone finally admitted quietly, "There was a request from your regional executive. System limitations for Northside are part of the closure acceleration process." "Closure acceleration?" I repeated, pulse spiking. "Our closure is scheduled for 30 days from now." A pause, then, carefully, "Not anymore." My stomach dropped. "Check your email," the technician added, then hung up before I could respond. I opened my inbox. There it was. Subject: Northside Branch, Transition Update. From Adam Sterling. Time 9:03 a.m. I clicked it. Effective immediately, Northside operations will be expedited. Staff should focus exclusively on closure tasks. Any non-essential activities are prohibited. Compliance review scheduled for Monday. Inventory audit Sunday, 8 a.m. mandatory. All account and loan processing capabilities will remain disabled until further notice. A. Sterling. My vision tunneled for a moment. He wasn't just limiting us. He was cutting off our ability to function entirely. He wanted to eliminate any trace of what we'd been doing. I stepped out into the lobby, the team watching me anxiously. "Well?" Tanya asked. I exhaled slowly. "They accelerated the closure." Ruben swore under his breath. Irene sank into a chair. He's trying to erase everything before we can present it. Max looked between us. So, what now? We can't process anything. We can't open new accounts. We can't run reports. We can't even print. Helen added, defeated. I felt the weight of 5 pairs of eyes waiting for me to tell them this wasn't the end. The truth? Part of me wanted to say it was, that we had tried, that this was bigger than us. But then I thought about the redevelopment district, the business owners who said no bank had ever listened. The years this branch had been dismissed, ignored, mistreated. I took a breath. We pivot. They stared at me, stunned. How? Ruben asked. We have no systems. You don't need systems to gather the truth, I said. And you don't need internal access to show the company the opportunity they're ignoring. Tanya leaned forward. What are you saying? I pulled the map from my office, spreading it across the table again. If Adam wants to erase us from the system, then we build a case outside the system. They exchanged looks, fear, hope, disbelief mixing into something electric. What does that mean exactly? Helen asked quietly. It means we document everything manually, I said. Every business we spoke to, every opportunity, every instance of ignored support requests, every dollar of potential revenue that could be generated if the branch stayed open. And then? Max asked. And then, I continued, we bring it directly to the people who outrank Adam. A long silence followed. Then Ruben's eyebrows shot up. You want to go to corporate leadership? Without going through regional? Yes, I said, because regional isn't just blocking us. He's actively sabotaging us. But Adam has allies, Irene whispered. People who trust him. People who won't want to hear this. That's why we bring evidence, I replied. Not opinions, not emotions. Evidence no one can ignore. They looked at the pile of notes on the break room table. Scribbled pages, printed requests, handwritten statements from business owners. And slowly, one by one, I watched something shift. Determination. Quiet but unshakable, Ruben nodded first. Okay, I'm in. Tanya followed. Me too. Helen straightened her shoulders. Tell us what to do. I took a breath, grounding myself in the moment. Today, I said, we organize everything we have. Tomorrow we gather more, carefully, and Sunday morning we finalize our case. And then? Max asked. I looked him directly in the eye. Then we fight. When the branch closed at 5 o'clock, I stayed behind alone. The others had offered to stay, but they needed rest. I needed quiet. I sat at the old wooden desk, papers spread everywhere, rain tapping against the window outside. And then my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He knows more than you think. Be ready. No name, no explanation. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Was it a warning? Or a threat? I didn't know, but either way, one thing was clear. The clock was running out. And Adam wasn't done yet. Sunday morning, the air felt unnaturally still, as if the city itself knew something was about to happen. I arrived at the branch just before 7:50 a.m., 10 minutes early for the mandatory inventory Adam scheduled. The parking lot was empty except for 3 cars, Helen's, Ruben's, and a sleek black sedan. I recognized instantly Adam was already here. Inside, the branch lights were off except for the faint glow from the lobby. Adam stood near the counter, arms crossed, tapping his foot impatiently. You're late, he said. I'm early, I corrected. He smirked. Time is relative when your branch is about to die. I didn't react. His goal was to provoke, but I couldn't afford to give him any emotional ammunition. The team arrived one by one, their faces tight, exhausted, but strangely steady. We began the inventory silently, counting pens, logging equipment, documenting ancient machines that should have been replaced years ago. At 8:37 a.m., Adam cleared his throat loudly. Before you go any further, he announced, I'll need your company laptops, badges, and access cards. They are no longer required. Helen froze mid-step. Tanya's hands shook. I stepped forward. The notice said after inventory. He waved me off. Plans changed. Compliance wants everything now. Effective immediately, this branch is closed. The words hit like a physical blow. It wasn't supposed to happen until the end of the day. But I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of anticipation. He wasn't just closing us early. He wanted to stop what we were about to do. He sensed something was happening. He just didn't know what. Yet I signaled quietly to the team. Give him what he wants. Don't fight. Don't reveal the panic. We handed over badges and devices. What Adam didn't know? We had already backed up everything externally. Every document, every interview, every ignored request, every financial projection, all neatly compiled in a physical binder and a private drive. When the last badge was on the counter, Adam exhaled in satisfaction. Finally, he said, we can all move on with our lives. I glanced at the clock, 10:22 a.m., 3 hours until the city's redevelopment briefing at the District Plaza. 3 hours until corporate leadership would unknowingly walk into the best ambush of my career. We left the branch together, silent until we reached our cars. That's when Ruben spoke. What if he's right? He asked quietly. What if none of this matters? What if they don't care? They might not, I said honestly, but we're not doing this to guarantee a win. We're doing it so the truth is impossible to bury. Helen placed a hand on my arm. Then let's go make it impossible. By 3 p.m., River District Plaza was packed. Business owners, contractors, journalists, city officials. The smell of roasted coffee from the food trucks drifted through the air. And at the front of the crowd, just as I hoped, stood 2 members of corporate leadership. Elaine Ward, Director of Operations, and Charles Wainwright, Chief Financial Officer. The perfect audience. The mayor stepped up to the microphone, beginning her speech about revitalization and small business growth. As she spoke, she gestured toward the crowd, and toward the cluster of business owners we'd helped this week. These new ventures, she said proudly, represent the future of our city. Charles nodded approvingly. Exactly what I needed. As the applause rose, I approached the edge of the stage. A security guard tried to stop me, but the mayor recognized me. Tanya's cousin had introduced us earlier. It's okay, she said. She's one of the people who's been helping our entrepreneurs. That got Elaine's attention. She stepped down, smiling politely. I'm sorry. Who are you exactly? I handed her the binder. My name is Liv Carver. Until this morning, I was the manager of Northside Branch. Elaine blinked. Northside? Isn't that the location scheduled for closure? It was, I replied, but not because it was unprofitable. Charles, hearing this, turned toward us. What do you mean? I opened the binder to the first page, a map of the district. Then the testimonies. The numbers, the rejected proposals, the ignored requests, the potential revenue, all meticulously documented. I kept my voice calm. Your regional executive has been filtering information, suppressing opportunities, accelerating closures without proper review. This community wasn't failing. It was being abandoned. Elaine flipped through the pages, her expression tightening with every turn. Charles frowned deeply. And you're certain these numbers are accurate? I handed him the flash drive. Everything is backed up, verified, and dozens of businesses here are willing to confirm it. As if on cue, several business owners approached. People we had met, spoken to, listened to. They spoke over one another, eager. She helped us set up accounts. She listened when no one else did. They told us the branch didn't support small businesses. I guess they didn't want to. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. And then, behind the cluster of people, I saw him. Adam. His face drained of all color. He pushed through the crowd, voice sharp. This is nonsense. Unauthorized outreach. You're all being manipulated. Elaine held up a hand. Enough. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. We will address this internally immediately. Adam opened his mouth, but froze, because Charles was staring at him like he had already been found guilty. By 7:40 p.m., a company-wide email went out. Effective immediately, Regional Executive Adam Sterling is placed on administrative leave pending investigation. A second line followed. Northside branch closure has been suspended until further review. I read it twice before showing the team, who erupted into disbelief, laughter, and tears all at once. But the email that hit me hardest came at 8:12 p.m. from Elaine Ward. Subject: Opportunity Live. After reviewing your findings, we would like to invite you to interview for a position overseeing community expansion initiatives. If you accept, you may bring your team. Elaine. I stared at the message, overwhelmed. We hadn't just saved a branch. We'd changed something much bigger.